My name's Ethan Alter. I'm a senior writer with Yahoo Entertainment, and I'm here with the two stars of Richard Jewell, Paul Walter Hauser and Kathy Bates. Thanks very much for coming in, guys.
Oh, thank you, Ethan.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great to have you here for this movie. Comes out on Friday, December 13th. You're making the rounds this week. I want to sort of back up and talk about when you first heard about the case of Richard Jewell. So, Paul, when do you first remember hearing about Richard?
Well, you know, I think I was about 9.5 when the incident happened, summer of '96. So it wasn't really on my radar as a kid or even as a teenager. It was just one of those anecdotal things you might hear about, and you assume that Richard Jewell was the bomber or something because you're not educated on the topic. And then when I got the screenplay, that's when I did a deep dive and sort of was like, is this real? And started fact checking everything and was like nauseated and shocked to find out what had transpired. What about you?
Same deal. It kind of went right past my radar in '96, and I remember watching Ali. You know, that was such an amazing moment. And then after the opening ceremonies, for some reason I dropped out. I can't remember what I was doing then, whether I was working, but I didn't have any idea what it was all about till I read the script.
Once you read the script, did you go back and read about it then? Were there things you went back to read the news coverage of the time?
Oh yeah, the script is based on Marie Brenner's Vanity Fair article in 1997 called The Ballad of Richard Jewell. And that's when Richard was still alive. And so
yeah, she was capturing the day-to-day, and what I love about that is you get a feel for some of the people in the article. It's not just black and white fact, it's also all the nuance and the idiosyncrasies of those relationships, including Watson Bryan, of course, the role that Sam Rockwell plays.
Right. Well, talk to me about some of those idiosyncrasies. What made Richard it's such an interesting person to you, Paul, playing him?
You know, what I liked about him was that he sort of, I play a lot of wacky characters and stuff, sort of, and Sam has too. Well, Kathy has too.
I was gonna say, man,
you know, we've all kind of
both whacked over here.
We've done the off-kilter, character thing quite a bit, but it was refreshing to play like a real guy and someone who had commitment to family and a sense of right and wrong and morals and faith, and then also this duty to a world that I'm not inundated with. The idea of wanting to be in law enforcement, I mean, that's one of the most difficult jobs in the world. I'd put it up there with parenting and teaching children, it's terrifyingly difficult. So playing that type of character was really attractive. And then the things that were fun to do were all the, the unintentional humor and some of the passion and naivete that led him into those places of great intention with disastrous execution. Yeah.
Kathy, what were some of the things you noticed reading about Bobby before you met her, little idiosyncrasies that jumped out at you?
What appealed to me about playing Bobby and reading the script was that she wasn't, one note. Mm-hmm. And it seemed to me a very authentic mother-son relationship. Mm-hmm. And I thought the script that Billy Ray wrote was so simple and yet very powerful. And obviously Clint Eastwood, I can't believe at my age, I've been in the business 50 years, and I just told him I feel like I've hit the big time. He's just an awesome dude, very sexy, just adore him.
Let's call it what it is.
Yeah, let's call it what it is. He's a good-looking guy.
He's got some presence to him.
That's right.
He might go far in this industry, I think it's safe to say. Yeah.
Well,
he's a new one, but we'll keep an eye on him.
Shot.
Well, the real Richard died in 2007. His mother Bobby is still alive. So can you tell me, Kathy, about the first time you met her and what that experience was like?
Yeah, I went down to Atlanta to start shooting, and I sat down with her at the production office. It was my birthday, and she baked me a pound cake. And she told me all about it, and because the only thing I know how to make is reservations. And she was telling me exactly the entire recipe by heart, and we went through the script, and she told me the things that, like, for example, I never called him sweetie or baby or Richie. It was always Richard or Richard, depending on what he was doing. And she's Baptist, like my mother. In many ways, she reminds me of my mom. And I recorded her, and she told me one anecdote that it just touches my heart, that they were very active in their church. And from the very beginning, there's an anecdote about Richard when he was 9 running around and making sure everybody had their programs.
Oh, yeah.
And it just tells you everything about him.
Yeah, servitude.
Yeah, exactly.
Always in servant mode.
Exactly. And she said while they were going through these hellish 88 days that someone came from their church, a woman, and they wouldn't let her in the apartment. And they let her open the door just about 8 inches, enough room for Bobby to get her hand out and clasp the woman's pinky and prayed.
Super sweet. By the way, you mentioned that thing with the fact that Bobby Jewell made you a pound cake. Are we talking out of school if we say her methodology for it?
Oh, yeah. No, that's good. That's a good point.
I love this.
Yeah, she said, okay, now, I think this would be really good. She said, I always keep a mat right in front of the oven because right before I bake it, I slam it down onto the floor and to get the air bubbles out. You know, I was like, okay, great. And I thought, no way are they going to put a camera on the floor and show that.
Richard's passion and specificity clearly came from somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Very well put.
So, Paul, for you, again, not being able to meet the real Richard, did Bobby help you? What were some of the ways she helped you as you were preparing?
Yeah, you know what? I met her on the Warner Brothers lot pretty early on when they were going after Kathy and Olivia and John and everybody and Sam. I was kind of cast first, and I got to go on the lot and meet Watson Bryan and Bobby Jewell and Clint and the head of Warner Brothers, this wonderful guy, Toby Emmerich. We all kind of had a really healthy sit down, and we got to kind of ask all the questions you would want to ask that you want to get out of the way. And a lot of my questions were more in alignment with everyday things. You know, I didn't want to know about the bombing. A lot of these things were in Billy Ray's screenplay. But what I did want to know was, you know, did he snore? What movies did he watch? What was his favorite snack? You know, like I wanted to know all the real stuff that really kind of makes up who we all kind of are, you know, and those simple truths could sometimes be indicative of greater truths. So they were super helpful and expository and encouraging, you know, having the encouragement of the real people and knowing that they're on board for it. That's a big blessing when you're doing a movie like this, you know.
So what was his favorite movie?
They said he watched a lot of war movies, you know, and I think that was sort of the service and the duty nature of him. And then I think he watched a lot of action films too, because I think he really did dream of, almost like my character in I, Tonya, where the guy wishes he was a spy but clearly couldn't be. Richard actually had the chops to do the things he was doing, just not always with the best execution as you see in the film, you know.
I also understand that Richard was married at a certain point. His wife isn't seen in the film. Did you talk to her at all? Was she involved behind the scenes?
I didn't personally reach out to her, and I didn't know what the situation was, but I do know that Kent and Kevin, the two gentlemen who wrote this companion piece to the film, a book called The Suspect, I do know that they've maintained contact with her, and I think she's very excited to see the film. I think she has her own investment in that as well, yeah.
Talking a little bit about the case, I understand at Q&As both of you have talked a lot about how you hope this film finally exonerates Richard. That even in Atlanta, people still refer to him as the bomber. So let's talk about that, Kathy. When people see this, how do you hope it clears his name? What do you hope they?
I hope people do go and see it. I mean, I think the message is very relevant, and even more so today. Back then in '96, CNN was just turning from a chat room to a full-blown news network, and I think part of what made the reporters so eager to break the story was that newspapers were falling like flies everywhere. But I also want to point out that it's not an indictment of the FBI or the media. They just got it wrong, and they were so eager to. There were billions of dollars at stake at the Olympics. And at the very beginning, I think a year before they even had the ceremony, the FBI, the GBI, you know, all these dudes, they were setting up possible scenarios of terrorists to try to figure out every possible way that there could be a problem. And unfortunately, because Billy Payne, who had brought the Olympics to Atlanta, he loved in Barcelona where there was this passaggio, you know, where people could go and walk at night and drink and have a good time. And so I think that led them to create a more open space, a more friendly space where you didn't have to worry about, you know, getting in through metal detectors and all of that. So it was it was a problem, obviously, that led to the bombing. It was.
I like what you said just now about not placing blame on any one sect or group, and I think that's not some cute political thing to keep our hands clean. It really is true that this is an isolated incident in which several people in different groups, either by omission of action or in their action, did something wrong, and the Jewell family took a serious toll because of that. So when people try to politicize it, we're not making a political statement. We're making a character-driven film, and the outcome is righting the wrong for Richard.
Yeah. And like I said, it's Marie Brenner's article, so it's a dramatization.
Of the Vanity Fair
It's based
piece.
on that true story. And there's some things that are not, actually realistic or whatever that we've taken dramatic license with. But I also wanted to say about where we are right now, we want the media to tell the truth.
Right.
We want the FBI to be able to do their work and be appreciated for it. And we want to trust our government. And so, all of those elements that we need to have a healthy America. And so I don't want this film to be used, as you say, in any kind of political way.
Yeah.
And that's not why Clint made this movie.
Yeah.
He made it because he felt it was a real American tragedy. And he's always been drawn to those stories. And the most exciting thing for all of us is that Bobby loves it. And that there's now going to be a plaque in Centennial Park with Richard's name on it and what he accomplished.
That's
and to
pretty
me,
cool.
I mean, it's wonderful that we're getting attention and nominations and all of this, but I think more than anything, all of us felt tremendous responsibility,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to see the plaque. I want to go do a little photo op with my family and friends over there. That'll be pretty special. And yeah, I think the movie's also, in a secondary sense, it's a piece celebrating the people of Atlanta. They were also victims of this bombing, and this is hopefully going to be some closure for them too. Yeah.
We've already seen some criticism about the way Kathy Scruggs is depicted in the movie, and there is that fear now in terms of the media being dismissed as fake news. And so it sounds like you want to push back against that idea of this being any sort of political statement.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that's interpretive. It's no different with other facets of entertainment or art. You can listen to a song like Brick by Ben Folds 5, and it's this beautiful piano song, and I'm a fan of it. And then you hear him talk about it, and it's about a tragedy when you're young, making tough decisions as a young person with a woman or whatever. So, you can interpret till your face goes blue. It doesn't mean you're right, And I think this film is something you got to see and experience to be able to have a full opinion on it, Yeah.
What do you think, in talking with Bobby and reading about Richard's attitude during those 88 days, what was the hardest thing for him, do you think, about not being believed, about being misidentified this way? What hurt him the most?
Well, it's what Kathy said a couple times. I've heard her say the thing he was good at and the thing he cared about was turned against him and used against him. So imagine, Ethan, you love, doing entertainment news, right? This is a big part of your life. Imagine the thing you love that you're dedicated to and you're talented at is used against you. I mean, that's a really cruel, dark twist of fate. My heart went out to him when I saw that, because I thought it could also taint that thing that you love and have worked for. And it didn't, because he kept doing police work after this all happened. He just went to a different county or district. But yeah, that part blew my mind and really broke my heart. What about you?
Yeah, it was the same thing. It was his talent that saved everybody. And they were always joking with him. They would say, come on, Richard, And thank God he convinced the GBI to call the bomb guys in. Otherwise, hundreds of people would have been killed instead of one unfortunate woman, Alice Hawthorne. And then there was a cameraman who had a heart attack, I understand.
Well, let's talk about Clint Eastwood as the director. We talked about the chance for you to work with him. You felt like you arrived. He's famously one-take Clint, one take and that's it. Was that a difficult set to get used to? What was that like getting used to?
I think that's a misperception. I think...
If you watch the movie and those are all one takes, we're real good at it. I had like 9 takes on my diner scene where I get choked up with Sam.
It was brilliant.
I made him do that a ton because I was like, bro, We are not skipping over this. Like, this is a moment. Let's make sure we get it. And he was very generous with me in that regard. Yeah.
I didn't realize that you can get to the point where the scene itself that's in the script is done, but he leaves it open. So you keep. I remember the first time I ran down the steps and I started talking to the sound guy, and he was like, you know. And I didn't realize that he keeps it up, and it's not done till it's done. So people think he's like this, and it's just the opposite. He's chill. He takes his time, and then it gets done efficiently. So you only have to do one take, or you only have to do takes, or you pick your battles like he did with you in that scene. Which, can I just say, excuse me, the way he eats that donut tells you everything about what he's been through in the last 2 months. It's just phenomenal work, really.
She means off camera. I was eating like.
Oh, jeez.
No, yeah, that was a tough scene, and thankfully he let me take a lot of cracks at it. Yeah, it's helpful.
Yeah. Well, how do you say when you say I want to have another shot at it? I mean, how do you tell Clint Eastwood that? Are you at all?
Pull aside and have a gentle sidebar in which you pose it as a question, even though you know you're going to fight for it, and basically demand another take so that you don't look like a fool in the final product. And you know, 9 out of 10 times he'd say sure, and we'd pop something off. But in one case, Sam and I pulled him aside once and asked him to redo something, and he goes, "Oh, I think we got it. Like, he felt confident, and we went, Clint Eastwood feels confident. Maybe we should feel confident.
I know. There was one scene that's actually not in the movie. It was one of the first ones I did, and I was having a tough time with it, and he said, "You got to trust me."
Yeah.
And so, I think we were all nervous at first to work with him. And, you know, as a woman, they talk about the Clint fog. You know, he's directing you, and you're just kind of, you know. But he's such a gent.
Every time you look at him,
dude,
time you look at him, it goes in slow-mo, and you just hear Dreamweaver. Yeah, that's the Clint case, the fog.
Yeah.
Did you just say he's a righteous dude?
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
He's the righteous dude of all righteous dudes.
Edie McClurg in Ferris Bueller's Day Off would say, he's a righteous dude.
The scene that I think about is when the FBI come in to ransack Richard's place the first time, essentially, and all the stuff is out there. And I mean, a scene like that, there is a lot of choreography going on. How much does he stage it ahead of time, and how much does he just sort of let the cameras stand back?
I feel like they find it. Him and his camera op, this ace named Steve Campanelli.
We call him Campy. He's been with him for 25 years.
Yeah, he did this famous shot in 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri, where Caleb Landry Jones gets thrown out a window by Sam Rockwell, and they do it as a oneer, and when they go outside, he's crawling away from Sam. This guy Campanelli, he and Yves Bélanger, our cinematographer.
Yeah.
The 3 of them were kind of a brain trust where they'd go in, they'd shoot the rehearsal, but they knew they were still kind of finding the blocking in the rehearsal. That was what I noticed.
I didn't feel like, in general, we didn't have to hit marks that much.
No, they kind of followed us around. It's almost, and I've seen David O. Russell do that a little bit, where like in Silver Linings Playbook, there's 5 people arguing in a room, and you're just kind of whip panning. There was a little bit of that going on, which I thought was nice for us. You know, it was nice.
Kathy, you got a Golden Globe nomination today.
What up? What up? Kay Bates killing the game
in the house.
You know, we're obviously looking ahead to Oscars. There's a big hope that both of you will be nominated when Oscars roll around.
Oh, you've been
from
talking
your mouth to God's ears.
Talking to my folks.
But I was just rewatching your acceptance speech for Misery earlier today. Remember when you won that? What do you remember about winning? Because that's almost, I think that's 30 years ago.
Several things. I knew I was going to win. My husband said, "No, you're not." He didn't want me to get my feelings hurt. I forgot to thank my mom.
Oh, no.
I didn't forget, but I kind of gave my dad all the credit, and I want to thank my mom if I'm able to win any of these, because we didn't come from a lot of money. They really gave me a great education, which I wouldn't be here if I hadn't. You know, and I just want to give her credit where credit is due. And also, there's a lot about Bobby that reminds me of my mom. And the other thing is that I didn't thank my husband. And I walked off stage with Daniel Day-Lewis and went, I forgot to thank my husband. And he said, very chill, he said, well, let's go back out. And I said, no, I know we can't go back out. So anyway, it was one of those nights, but I just knew I was going to win. And I was out of the country working, so I missed all the Michigas. So I just sailed in, grabbed that sucker, and
The Michigas?
yes, you know.
Was it the hoopla?
The hoopla.
The award season race, the marathon.
yeah.
Yes,
Well,
exactly.
I mean, my husband said they were trying to film inside the window.
Oh my gosh.
With me getting made up. He said, no. He said, no, we're not doing that.
You know what? Maybe you've thanked your mom with this role. Maybe this performance is a thank you unto itself.
go.
She reminded you of
hope
her.
so.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah. Was it satisfying to win from Misery too? I mean, it's a performance that doesn't always get honored. It's that kind of horror movie performance. You beat Anthony Hopkins to the punch, winning for Hannibal Lecter that way. I think.
I
so.
know. I got to give him his Oscar the next
Right.
year. It was so very
That's
cool.
cool.
I remember walking in that night, and he was already in his seat, and I said, dude, you're going to win this thing. I just knew he was. And no, that was very cool. I don't know. I remember Rob saying, you may get the nomination, but you're not going to win, is what he said. When I first saw it on the screen, like a little screening, I was like, okay. I could hear the saw on the branch behind me. It was like, okay, I think that's a little off the wall. I thought it was a little risky, so yeah.
You've worked with some great directors. You've worked with Rob Reiner and James Cameron and now Clint Eastwood. Like that's exciting. I think working with great actors is always great, and we want that. But like, there is something so cool about just getting to work with someone who you kind of implicitly trust, and you know is going to do something cool. You know.
Absolutely.
And we've all gotten really tight. We just stopped. We just shot it in August.
Yeah, right.
We wrapped
So
August
he works
14th.
really quick.
Yeah, and Billy Ray was telling a story at Deadline Contenders. He was saying, in May, they said, come sit down and talk with Clint. And so Billy Ray said, so this is for 2020, right? And Clint said, no, we can have it out by December. I mean, why do we want to lollygag about with this, So, I mean,
Lollygagging.
Lollygag.
Taking more than
That's
4
right
months
there.
to make
I know. So it's been great for us because we've been on a thread since the very
We've
beginning.
been texting like crazy, just like,
trash.
you guys, did you read the article?
Yeah.
You know,
Lots of emojis of drinks, that kind of
A lot of
stuff.
that.
We've got a party, all that stuff.
Right.
And so we're really tight. It's been a great group, and you don't have to manufacture that a year later and try to remember people's last names.
Right.
What's been your advice to Paul as we're approaching award season and Oscars in particular? If a
You
nomination
mean
comes
besides
through?
act better?
Or just how to handle the attention that comes with this sort of.
I have not,
awards.
because I have to say, I've done several of these interviews. I know he's a crazy guy, wild and crazy guy, but you're so great at these interviews. You're really a lot smarter than I thought you were.
Welcome to everyone's
truth
opinion
comes
of
out.
me. I play so many buffoons every time I show up. They're like, "Where's the mouth breather?"
Right.
Yeah.
You're very articulate.
That's good. That's good. I look like a knuckle dragger.
No, but it's
I'm
great.
quite lazy.
You are a knuckle dragger, but you're like, you bridge the Neanderthal into the Homo sapiens really well.
I love it. I hope this is the mass of what gets put on Yahoo. This is amazing. This is way better than our Ask Jeeves interview. Let me tell you.
We get lollygagging. We get everything.
Yeah. We're colorful.
There we go. Well, Paul, speaking of Daniel Day-Lewis, he's known for transforming himself. Let's segue.
Totally.
You transform yourself in this as well. I mean, Eastwood asked you to gain weight for the role. You had to, what was that experience like of transforming yourself into Richard? What process did you use?
Yeah, he and I, thankfully, to make the transition easier, we do have a lot of commonalities. Our gentleness, and I was already pretty heavy set, and we look like we're from the same corn-fed populace. But I put on 25 pounds, and I had to get the accent down, and I tried to get a little sense of physicality and sort of play the lowly Eeyore of it all, because there are moments where he's kind of feeling like John Wayne or Clint Eastwood, but that's only in the moments of tracking down the guy with the backpack or whatever. Like, there's only a couple moments in the film where he really stands tall, literally. So I tried to capture all those little things and hope that it was amounting to a big thing, right? And improvisation, Clint was very generous with that, so it was nice to be able to have that freedom to try things that I thought Richard would have said, and some of them stayed in the film, which was really cool.
There was one moment I wish it stayed there. The one where she says, "Stop it," and then you go over and sit down on the sofa.
Oh, you mean the grocery thing?
The grocery thing. So Nadia comes in with a bag of groceries.
Played by Nina Ariano.
Oh my God, she's brilliant, killer. And so I look and I was like, oh, it's all the stuff I'd like to eat if I wasn't on a diet. Hot dogs and Cheez-Its and Oreos and all this stuff.
She's improving all this because
yeah,
Clint won't yell
because
cut.
he just left it open, and I'm looking over there and I'm seeing my sons and I say, Richard, come on, let's have dinner. And before I knew it, he came behind the counter and the bag was empty by then. And I don't know what possessed me. I put it on his head.
Just put it over my face.
Over his face. And right then, Sam said, that can be your new disguise.
Yeah, Sam was like, that's your disguise, Richard. You're going to go outside. So like those little like moments of, I guess, what would the word be? Like you're just sort of like looking under rocks and trying to find stuff. And I don't know, there are moments like that are still in the movie, which is cool.
Yeah, but that's what I thought was great because you don't often get a lot of rehearsal time.
Yeah.
So when you're leaving it open like that, it's more time to really connect with each other.
Yeah, and there's no bad idea in brainstorming. That's what's fun about improv is, you're not going to be penalized. We're all playing around trying to find something.
What's your guide to putting on 25 pounds? For someone who wants to gain that, what would you say? What's the regimen?
Well, you know what? I lost 35 pounds before I did I, Tonya, and then I had to put it all back on for that. And then I was down about 13 pounds while doing this Spike Lee movie. And then I got the call about this, and I put 25 on. So for me, it's I think after Trump got elected, I was pouring like liquor into my ice cream bowls. I was literally like having a deconstructed booze milkshake. It was so beautifully sad. So I would say add some booze to your ice cream.
Okay.
And get a bread basket at every restaurant. You know what I mean? That's how you put on weight.
I like it. Carbo load and booze.
Stay the heck off that treadmill. Get delivery service, all that stuff. Throw your shoes away.
Don't get off the sofa.
Yeah.
What's the scene? I mean, it sounds like the whole experience was great, but is there one scene in particular that maybe is in the movie that you remember shooting on the day and that you're most proud of how it turned out when you watched the film?
I'll say mine really quick because I remember I saw a rough cut of the movie in London with my parents when I was filming something. So I saw it and I knew the movie was good. I thought I was pretty good or okay, but there was one scene that I was like, hell yeah, we hit it. And it was this scene where I'm eating lasagna with you and the actor who plays the cop,
Bill Miller.
And there was just a bit where like I end up talking about bombs and I improv this thing and I went like this to show the guy who blows his finger off. And I did that and I remember watching that and going, that feels like a real guy. That feels like a real person, and that's like what I'm always striving for. I don't always hit it, but in that particular scene, I remember watching and going, good job, buddy.
Yeah.
You're okay. Good job.
Well, the diner scene was, we already talked about. It was really
What about you?
awesome.
What was something you watched and you went, Kathy, you still got it, babe.
Well, I have
was
to
that?
say, when I started out with Clint, I thought, I don't know, baby. I kept seeing his name on the chair getting bigger and bigger, and I realized that's because he's never in it. And I kept having, flashbacks of Hilary Swank, pow, pow, and it was just like, oh man, do I still have it? And the scene, obviously, for me that I'm really proud of, but in general, I have to just go back and say this. When I saw the screening, I can't remember seeing something that I was in that I really just got pulled into it, And by the time it got to the press conference scene, I was sobbing. I was absolutely sobbing. And I just left there thinking, wow, I think I've still got it, and I'm so proud of what we've done and that, I was stunned. I was really stunned at how wonderful the movie was.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you both for coming in today. Paul Walter Hauser and Kathy Bates from the new movie Richard Jewell in theaters on December 13th. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank
Really
you,
appreciate it.
Ethan.
Thank you, bud.